was inspired to speak on this subject because I've been reading a book called The Good Life. Has anyone else read it? It's way up in the bestseller list. This is what it looks like. I'm going to talk about what it prompted in me and what it says itself about the good life. So let's begin with, what do we mean when we talk about the good life? To answer that question, as with other big questions, depends on interpretation and on whom we ask and when we ask. Are we speaking sincerely about a concept, or are we being ironic? Let's begin with its origins among the Greeks of 2,000 years ago. For them, the good life was a philosophical concept that describes the ideal conditions of human existence. Ideal conditions, including virtue, wisdom, knowledge, and purpose. Virtue, wisdom, knowledge, and purpose. I don't know how many people nowadays focus on virtue. Doesn't seem to be that many, does it? Now what about wisdom? Who is seeking wisdom nowadays? Who is seeking knowledge? Who is developing purpose? The earliest known use of the phrase good life occurs in Plato's dialogue, the Phaedrus, from 375 before the Common Era. That's a long time ago. Cut to today, when people use the term prosaically to describe everything from having your hamburger your way to indulging in the sybaritic life, one similar to the old TV show, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. It's hardly surprising that this is so when we consider the nature of popular American culture, which celebrates rugged individualism and conspicuous consumption on a scale unknown to our ancestors. At least, I think it was unknown to our ancestors. There's a different spin or meaning in the book The Good Life, written by two psychiatrists, which examines closely the results of a massive and decades-long study of human development which originated at Harvard University. The values of that philosophical concept reveal themselves only in fragments of the replies given to questions that were asked of the participants. They were never the point of the Harvard study. Instead, the authors focused on what makes for a happy life, a fulfilling life, in that sense, a good life. As we read stories of several participants, and they are fascinating stories in their details and outcomes, we discover that whether or not a person has flourished in an emotional way is far more significant than if that person was professionally successful or wealthy. You may have considered your own life in these terms, and if not, maybe you will after today. Have you been successful? In what way have you been successful? Have you flourished? How did you flourish? What helped you flourish? Has it been both? I recently asked these questions of a few people I know, some distant, some close, and I will share with you the comments that came back when I asked the question. All I said was, what does the good life mean to you? I didn't add any qualifiers, I didn't talk about the study, didn't talk about the Greeks, just ask that question. The first person I asked immediately said involvement. Involvement made for a good life. What was meant was being actively involved in life, not sitting back and watching life go by. Using all 5 senses, and that's exactly what was said, using all 5 of my senses. That person is very creative and in touch with dozens of friends, family members, former colleagues, students, and is always thinking and doing. It was astonishing to understand everything that that person had done during COVID. Made a quilt, wrote a book, self-published a book, gave recitals, performed with various artists in different places, traveled around to see people it was safe to see. Had a lot to say and do. The next person wanted to be left alone, to not have to engage intimately with others or to be responsible for them. When it came to finances, that person's idea of a good life meant being able to bargain for everything and get the best possible deal no matter what. A third person simply said, having a peaceful life together with loved ones, a life doing all the things you'd like to do, and later added spending time with friends, having dinner, drinking wine, sitting quietly at a fireplace. On a different note altogether, a person responded that it had never been a good life. There had been no experience of good life. Every relationship in that person's life had fallen apart. The most important piece in having a good life, per this response, was being with someone who loves you as much as you love them over the years. Not just for 2 months of honeymoon time, but over the years. The next part of the answer was, good health would be very nice if it were a life without medication. Yeah, a lot of us know what that's like. More money would be nice too, but at what cost? Money is not that important. It's a tool, that's all. And then there was this response. I think a good life would involve good health, satisfying relationships with diverse people, and having enough resources to be able to live without financial anxiety. Pleasure in work and in experiencing the world would also be wonderful. Finally, a thought. A good life is one that includes the freedom to be yourself. Sometimes we confuse or equate the good life with the high life. But I don't mean by that the drug life. I mean living the sybaritic life, living easily without pain or difficulty, loneliness or isolation. Those last 2 qualities, along with anxiety and depression, have crept into the lives of millions of those around us. They've always been there. Of course they've always been there. We're human. But the numbers now are vast in terms of people who name those problems. Some of it's caused by the separations from and the deaths of dear ones during the pandemic. Some of it is caused by sudden unemployment. Some of it by political strife that increases with every passing day. But pain and difficulty find us from time to time, whether we are wealthy or poor, privileged or not, educated or not. And several of you have mentioned heartache and heartbreak that you have experienced. These are part of the human condition. One of the words that jumped out of me was not one that was overly emphasized in the study, and that's the word purpose, which comes from the Greek discussion. Purpose is a thought-provoking word. Have you lived your life with purpose, with goals that you wanted to achieve? How has that worked for you? Or hasn't it? Have you moved along on a conveyor belt from one thing to the next, or have you driven yourself to destinations of your conscious choosing? Was there a goal that you set, that you went to and achieved? What has kept you going? Purpose or chance? Some people just sort of mosey along, no particular goal in mind, and they arrive at a series of experiences that become their lives. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Several years ago, Pastor Rick Warren, minister of Saddleback Church, which was the largest evangelical Baptist church in the country, and at one point had 38,000 people attending services. Yes, 38,000. Wrote 2 books that took bestseller lists by storm, The Purpose-Driven Life and The Purpose-Driven Church. People gobbled up those books looking for instruction on how to have a meaningful life with a purpose. I don't think I've walked around thinking about my life that way, but there has been a purpose to every chapter in my life. One of the things that gets in our way in this country is the amazing amount of distraction. Distraction coming at us from all sides. From the internet, from the television, from our phones, from everything and everyone we encounter. In the country of enough is rarely enough, we are urged to shop, shop, shop. Everything from religious holidays and national commemorations, along with days of disasters, as well as fake events, such as Christmas in July, becomes an excuse to pull out our credit cards. I would say we pull them out to hear the cash register ring, but we don't hear that very often anymore, do we? The card goes in silently, although there is a commercial now for Chime, and it goes ding when the card goes in. It's quieter now in many stores, but the sales are swifter. They are instantaneous, in fact. The internet has seen to that. Ironically, at the same time, we are deluged with appeals for charitable contributions. Not just once, but repeatedly through the year. One friend recently commented that she makes 1 annual donation to each cause she supports. When new rounds of appeals arrive in the mail, she throws them in her trash. Have you ever made a list of the appeals that you receive? I've been doing that over the last 2 weeks, and the list is now this long. Have I ever sent them back, begging the senders to save trees, to stop sending blankets and t-shirts? No, I haven't, because unless you put a first-class stamp on it, it's not going to go back. Bulk mail, third-class mail does not get sent back by the post office. What does that have to do with living our best lives? In fact, what does that mean? Looking at American television, you might get the impression that it means going to a sandals resort for some canoodling, or going to the Giant Guitar Hotel in Orlando to visit the casino, or buying a lavish home in a new development. This always slays me, where prices start at $600,000 per unit. I don't think so. Conspicuous consumption is a notable characteristic of the American way of life, sometimes to the point of extreme revulsion. As I said, this is a country in which enough is rarely enough. If you're going to live a good life, you have to know your limits. You have to know what you can live with, what you can manage, and how you can be on the road to more freedom in your life. I want to read you the closing section of this book, because it makes the major points of the study. We are living in a time of global crisis. Connecting with our fellow human beings takes on new urgency in this context. The COVID-19 pandemic put this need for connection into stark relief. As the disease spread and lockdowns began, many people reached out to solidify the most important relationships in their lives, to boost their sense of connection and security. It was, after all, the central finding of the study that meaningful relationships with other people are the driving factor and the key determinant as to whether or not you will have a good life. It's not the money, it's not the toys, it's not the house, it's your relationships. When all of those things closed down and people were driven to computer screens, it suddenly became clear that schools, movie theaters, restaurants, and ballparks weren't just about learning, watching movies, eating food, and playing sports. They were about being together. One of the joys of being part of a faith community is that we are together. We try not to skip Sundays because we want to be together. Thousands of stories from the Harvard study show us that the good life is not found by providing ourselves with leisure and ease. Rather, it arises from the act of facing inevitable challenges and from fully inhabiting the moments of our lives. As that respondent said, being involved in life. Not sitting passively off on the side, but doing and being. It appears quietly as we learn how to love and how to open ourselves to being loved. As we grow from our experiences and as we stand in solidarity with others through the inevitable string of joys and adversities in human life. Is there anyone here in the room who has never had a problem in life? Encountered a roadblock that stopped you? Had an illness that freaked you out? Had to deal with the loss of another person who was special to you? Or an animal? Or a place that you lived, that you loved and had to leave? I don't think so. So how do you move further on your path toward a good life? First, by recognizing, and I love this line, the good life is not a destination. It is the path itself, and the people who are walking it with you. Sometimes the people we meet are just from chance encounters. Sometimes they're the result of deliberate decisions to go to a certain school, to live in a certain place, to travel to a certain country. You never know where the people who are going to be important to you are going to come from. As you walk, second by second, you can decide to whom and to what you will give your attention. Week by week, you can prioritize your relationships and choose to be with the people who matter, not with the ones who are meaningless to you. Not every person in your life will be special to you. You need to know which ones are. You need to recognize that they are. Well, so here's the final suggestion, and I love this one. It reminds me of a sermon from several months ago. Think about someone, just one person who is important to you. Someone who may not know how much they really mean to you. It could be your spouse, your significant other, a friend, a co-worker, a sibling, a parent, a child, or even a coach or a teacher from your younger days. This person could be sitting right beside you, right now. Or as you read this book. They could be standing over the sink washing the dishes, or in another city, or another country. Think about where they stand in their lives. What are they struggling with? Think about what they mean to you, what they have done for you in your life. Where would you be without them? Who would you be without them? Now think about what you would thank them for if you thought you would never see them again. You know, families who have lost children in school shootings and all the rest of it really focus on this in the recovery period of moving through the grief of losing their children. I've heard several people on television say, I hug my child and kiss him goodbye every morning and pray that it's not the last time I'm going to see him. I pray that that child will come back. So think about what you would thank them for if you thought you would never see them again. And at this moment, right now, turn to them, call them, tell them.